Harkin. Councillor Boyle.
Here, Karen.
Councillor Doyle. Councillor Edwards. Councillor Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Ferguson.
Here, Karen.
Councillor Fleming. Councillor Harkin.
Here.
Councillor Jackson.
Shaw.
Councillor McGinley.
I'm Shaw, online, Karen.
Councillor Sonoya Barr.
Here, Karen.
And Councillor Tierney.
Here, Karen.
Okay, thank you, members.
Thank you, Karen. Apologies, members, of some IT issues in the Guildhall here, but we'll go on the best we can. Item 3 is the broadcasting statement, and I'll read it out to you now, members. I'd like to remind everyone present at this meeting in the Guildhall or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you're consenting to being filmed and to use of storage of those images for broadcasting and training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historic records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of Council Privacy Notice may be found on the Council website at derryandstrabane.com. Okay, members, move. Yep, 2 seconds, members. Thank you, members. Moving to item 4, declarations of members' interest. You can take this opportunity to put any interest into the chat box, or you can raise them during the meeting as the meeting progresses. Members, moving on to item 5, you'll be glad to hear there's no chairperson's business at today's meeting. I have nothing to raise myself, nor has any member contacted me to raise any issue. So, members, that leaves us with item 6, which is to receive representatives from a number of organisations to present on their work in relation to the cost of living crisis. And members, unfortunately, Joan Barr of St Vincent de Paul has informed us that she won't be able to attend the meeting due to a family issue that she's currently going through. So at this stage, members, I would like to inform that I'll be taking both presentations from John Lockray from the Hope Centre, Cornerstone City Church, and the presentation from Tanya Skillon and Jacqueline Wright from the Salvation Army. They'll be taken together, members, with an opportunity for questions thereafter. So the first person to present will be John Lockray. John, if you're online there.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I hear you okay. Yep, I'll get your presentation up on screen.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, there we go. And yep, over to you, John.
Yeah, well, can I just say, first of all, thanks for the invitation and for having us be part of this meeting today. It's a real privilege and honour for us as a church and the Hope Centre to be able to share with the council. Just a bit of brief history, I suppose. The church has been going for over about 25 years within the city. And just in the last few years, the Hope Centre has been birthed in November 2019. We were having a leadership meeting one night in the church, and one of our elders was late and they parked over at the railway station, and there was a lady that jumped into the water in front of him as he was parking his car. So we managed to get over and get the lady out of the water, and we just really felt that night this real urge and need to do something for our city, and we birthed the Hope Centre. But little did we think about 20 odd years before that there were people in the congregation that had this vision and had this dream of setting up a Hope Centre where it would be this place of rescue and security within the city. So we have a food bank, we have a clothing bank, We also have Christians Against Poverty Centre, which would help with debt counselling and help them with money and how to budget. For a lot of this, we have a social supermarket. We have facilities where people can come in and use like a laundrette facilities, and also where they can shower. And like compassion is a big thing for us at the heart of our church. It's not a bolt on. It's something that we believe is at the heart of what we do, just within our church family. So within that, we have our food bank, but we also have facilities there where people can come and use and get food. And also we have like a social supermarket where they can come and also they can get help of how to budget for a meal, how to plan for a meal, how to actually cook the dishes. We've put together a program like a bit like an Eat Well for Less program where they watch a video, and we've done all this in house and real just around nutrition, but also on a budget, a menu, and trying to get as many dishes out of that. We've noticed just the cost of living going up, and people are finding this really hard. We went in 2019 to a house in Clooney, and there was a young lad there. He didn't know how to turn on his oven. He didn't know how to open up a tin of soup or a tin of beans. So it really put it towards us. Well, what can we do? So we decided to set up this social supermarket and have different areas that we can help and support our community. We have 3 different stages within the Hope Centre. We have stage 1, which is the rescue, and really that's access for the people in the city to get a food parcel if they're in need, where they can get 3 parcels in 3 months. And this is aiming just to help a short-term need of food poverty. And then we have a renew stage, and that would be the social supermarket, which I talked about, where we have all those other different services available, from debt management to money management, of how to structure their shops and everything. And this is a 6-month program, and it's helping to move people into a bit more of just independence. And then the 3rd stage is a restore program, and we're just in the middle of this process where we're trying to get people back into re-employment, of being upskilled, of looking at local businesses and firms, of how we could create opportunities and maybe get work experience and create an avenue for these guys to get back into work. And also along this, we've noticed that there's a lot of these guys that are coming with addictions within our city, and there's a lot of difficulties around that. So it's trying to get alongside them and to help with them. And yes, one of our lines is like it's a hand up, it's not a hand out. We want to try and bring people out of just the situation that they are in, and to help them. The next slide there talks just about some of the food that we have put out in 2021, and just in the different families and different areas, and just help and support our city the best that we can. And we also have a pregnancy crisis support centre unit there within the church as well. We're working closely with Life NI. And that's for any young ladies that are finding themselves in crisis of pregnancy. We're helping them with food, with clothes, with cots, with buggies, car seats, and we've really noticed that really taken off just in the last few months, especially. And 2022 here, we've been working real closely with the Western Trust, with 21 Training Agency, Fair Share, Christians Against Poverty, Damien House, Foyle, Women's Aid, Simon Community, and Sainsbury's and Tesco's and Marks and Spencer's have also been very, very kind to us within the Fair Share program. And we've noticed at the start of this year, we all have, with the cost of living and everything going up, that it was a wee bit slow to start. But in the last few months, we've noticed that with the war in Ukraine and the crisis of that, and the increase of costs of everything, that the Hope Centre is actually starting to really pick up again. So it's a lot of around the bills and and feeding their families. And it's actually the working people at this time are finding it hard. It's not just the people that are homeless or that have no jobs, that are unemployed. It's just now families just don't have enough to meet that. So we're trying to get alongside these people and just to help them and journey in this. So it's the working poor really that are coming alongside the Hope Centre at this time, and that are really using the facilities that are there. But yeah, we believe that the Hope Centre is here for our city, and it's funded by itself. It's funded by different grant applications that we have applied for and ongoing donations. Yes, within the people and within the heart of the church, but also just people that have been watching what has been happening online over the pandemic and have been given us like one-off donations, which has been really, really greatly valued. So look, I hope that's okay. That's just a short bit of information of what the Hope Centre is. But we've, as I said, been in the church for the last, or been in the city for the last 25 years, but we really sense that we're here to serve our city the best that we can. And we believe it's our mandate, and it's the call of the local church to have compassion at the heart and to serve the people of their city in whatever way we can. So I hope that's okay for you all.
Perfect, John. Thank you very much. And we'll bring in the other presentation before we take some questions from members, if that's okay with yourself, John. We'll do questions at the end. Is that okay?
Thank you.
I imagine there's going to be a lot of overlap in the questions. Okay. So Tanya and Jacqueline from the Salvation Army, if we can get their presentation up on screen. Okay, Tanya and Jacqueline, if you want to give your presentation, and afterwards we'll do some questions and answers from members. Thank you.
No problem. Well, first of all, I'd just like to reiterate what John has said about passing on our thanks for being included in this meeting. We really appreciate that. I'd just like to say from the outset that we, Jack and myself, we actually work in the headquarters in Belfast. So the Salvation Army, they are a church in Derry, and the current church leader, Julia Mapstone, who's been in situ for a number of years, is actually moving on, and this is the period of time that they move on in. So there's actually no church representative from the Salvation Army available locally, but it was Julia Mapstone, and from this Thursday it will be Sue Whitla. So that's why you have the pleasure of Jackie and myself trying our best to convey the work that has been carried out this year, and especially in relation to the cost of living crisis. So first of all, I would just like to give a wee bit of background as well. So the Salvation Army in Derry is actually a 3-storied building. It's nestled in between 2 streets, not far from the city centre, John Street and Carlisle Road. Its location puts it firmly between the 2 communities, and through its neutrality, we believe it can relate to all who come seeking help. The Salvation Army is primarily a church, but we also have a strong community outreach. There is a major repair and configuration work being carried out on the building. At the moment, really, we're just starting that project. And because of this, the church is currently operating a limited programme, while, of course, coming out of the restrictions of COVID-19. So the aim for the Salvation Army kind of mirrors the strategic plan of Derry City and Strabane Council. It's a thriving, prosperous and sustainable environment with equality of opportunity for all. There is a desire to support all in the community, and its membership is made up from both communities, thus giving an all-round understanding of the culture and context. There, can we have the next slide? Or no, sorry, just keep that slide on. Sorry, that's fine.
So you will appreciate, because of the the state of the building and the repair work being done, the weekly programme is a little bit diverse and different at the moment. The hall is open and it's a place where people can come for fellowship, for shelter, for advice, for signposting, and also for practical assistance. And that would probably be people coming in asking for help towards the payment of utilities and oil, etc. As Tanya has already mentioned to you, the church leader until recently was Julia Mapstone, and she has told us that she would receive daily phone requests for help, either to her home or to the church. So really the need for help in this respect seemed to be kind of 24/7. Now, also the church obviously has its weekly worship and Bible study, youth group, toddlers group. And so it's quite a thriving, busy little centre. The church minister and her dedicated group of volunteers are always on the go. We're quite excited about the future for Derry with the new building, because obviously that will enable more community outreach and will offer better facilities in the heart of the Derry community.
Next slide, please.
So one of the things that currently is happening in Derry, there is an arrangement with the PSNI and the Salvation Army. The PSNI provide names of people who need help and assistance, and these are normally or always people who, for various reasons, are unable to come into the city or don't feel safe coming into the city. So this regular help has strengthened relationships with the Salvation Army and the PSNI. And we feel this is a good thing because obviously our leader was female and the next one obviously will still be female. So it's always good to have that extra support from people who we feel that we can trust. There's also phone calls for help, and the people present at the building themselves to make the rest of the continual requests for help. Sometimes we have referrals for help come from social services and local agencies. Now, most of these groups have become established and trusted partners from the Salvation Army's Family Appeal and their Christmas activities. I expect most of you know that our Family Appeal, we do this in partnership with St Vincent de Paul, and there is a bit of an underwritten agreement with the Salvation Army and SVP. The Salvation Army supplied food hampers and social services and local help agencies, while SVP cover and help all the individual requests made locally. You can imagine and appreciate this is a little bit time consuming and it's a bit of a lengthy progress, but it's made fun and the volunteers enjoy what they're doing and are happy to do this. For a small group of helpers, you'll be astonished to know that last year they were able to help somewhere in the region of 346 families, and that meant that 821 children were helped. I think that's incredible. And the number of hampers distributed throughout the community was 412, which again is no mean feat. And I'm sure there was a few added on at the end for good measure.
Next slide, please. So it's always humbling when those who are helped just take the time to say thanks for the help, and it doesn't always happen, but when it does, it keeps us focused on what we're doing and why we're doing it. And it helps focus us on the importance of helping those who are in crisis. A few comments that we have received said, "Thank you so much. I will certainly tell everyone how you went out of your way to help me, and I will not forget what you did for me." Another person said, "I don't know what to say other than I now believe God answers prayers From the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you. I was sad and worried about my kids, but because of your help, I can now sleep at night. Someone else said, the supply of oil I have been given has made a huge difference to me and my 4 children. When my oil ran out, I had to use electric heaters, which was costly and not good for their asthma. It also caused my fibromyalgia to flare up, which drained my strength and ability to look after my family. Your help has been amazing, and I want to say a huge thank you for all your care and kindness. Somebody else said, you're lifesavers. I was doing my rosary, asking for help, crying every night because I am not able to get presents for my children and the house was too cold. Now the house is warm and there are presents for the children, and I'm not crying but saying thank you when I do my rosary. And some other comments were the trusted Salvation Army, because when I ask for help, they treat me like a person and not a number, and they always get back to us and we trust them.
Thinking of the cost of living crisis, you will appreciate that we have experienced a huge increase in the number of people requesting help with payment of utilities. And I think our last speaker mentioned something of the fact that this dilemma really is no respecter of persons. And it's the employed people as well as the unemployed who are struggling to make ends meet and to find the resources to pay the bills that are coming in and constantly being increased. But we currently endeavour to meet these needs as best we can. But as you can appreciate, we do not have a bottomless pit to draw from. One of the newer issues that has presented itself is with families who are currently in bed and breakfast accommodation, and they have come asking for help with the washing of their clothes, etc. And this is happening more and more. Families are finding and being given shelter, for which they're grateful, but the situation doesn't end there, and it will probably only get worse instead of better, because more and more B&Bs are being used for this purpose.
So it was interesting just to hear, first of all, from John at Cornerstone and what they're offering. And part of the thought process of putting this presentation together was really what can we sort of ask for support-wise, or if there's anything out there that we can do to maybe bring agencies together so that they can work together in the local area with support of the council. That's perhaps one of the things that we could do and become a stronger group, signposting to each other with the knowledge of what each other's can provide and what the referral process might be. And then, of course, as Jackie already alluded to, the cost of living crisis does not stop just with the person coming to us for support. We are also self-funded. We rely on donations from very generous givers and from people who are in the Salvation Army church and community. So again, our costs are increasing, and as we provide the programme that is required by the local community, that costs us an increase in finance as well. So didn't want to end on that. So with just ending on first, a final wee thank you from somebody that has actually come through the Salvation Army core there in Derry, and they wanted again to just give a story of what their situation was. So one of our current volunteers was brought by his friend to the breakfast club that the Salvation Army provided, needing support with food and utilities and clothing because of a family breakdown. He actually became a regular attender to the breakfast club and then helped at the Christmas family appeal with the heavy lifting. He's now one of our key volunteers, helping to run our Friday drop-in and looking into fundraising for us. So it just shows the value of providing the support, and a lot of times people want to give that support back to one way or another. We believe that Londonderry Salvation Army is a place where people know they are going to be accepted, they can make friends and have a place to belong to. We also hope and pray that the location and reputation of the Salvation Army will continue to be critical for a long time to come, as it is recognised as a safe meeting place and a loving community to be part of. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jackie and Tanya. At the moment, I have no members in the queue. Yep, apologies. Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure you know we're having some difficulties here with mics today. Thanks to John and to Tanya and Jackie for their presentation. It's fantastic to see the wider Christian community coming together to provide services for people in need, because sometimes it's very easy for people to criticise churches and congregations and communities like that. One of the things I'm really keen to hear from you is, and we're going to ask other partners as well, but I'd be interested to hear. Council has currently got a hardship fund of £308,000, and we're currently having a discussion with partners around the criteria as to how we make sure that the people who need this support, which is probably going to be in the form of £100 fuel vouchers, or that we make sure that those people get them. Do you have any criteria for your services? And what would your advice, if any, to us be in terms of trying to target people who might need the support in terms of any criteria that we might set? We really welcome your input on that. Thank you.
Okay, John, if you want to maybe answer first, and then we'll take Tanya and Jackie. Hopefully you picked that question up.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I think it's linking in with a lot of the key agencies that are already within the city. You know, this is something that, as I said, has been in our heart for years, but we're only 3 years into the Hope Centre. But it's like in this short period of time, we have seen that there's a lot of different agencies out there, and just even over just the last, coming up there to Christmas time, it's hooking in with a lot of those agencies of seeing where the actual real need is. So I suppose for us, we're maybe a wee bit different than the ladies in the Salvation Army. We don't as yet have a facility set up where we can help with oil and heating and electricity, and that the cap end of it would do that, but we would be more with the food. So it would be probably helping the existing agencies out there in the city that know where this real need is, and it's really zoning in on that, where we get a lot of questions over the last 3 years of saying, well, anybody can come into your drive-through, anybody can get deliveries of food, how do you know they're not taking the hand? But the majority of the people that we're seeing through, you just know, even listening to the ladies in the Salvation Army, like, just people are at what's ends with this. They break down, they're crying, and you know exactly where the real need is. So I suppose for me, to sum it up, is like, is there a way that we could all come together within the different agencies and working through even, the doctors and different situations like that of seeing where is this need, and really, I suppose even you guys within the local council, you know that too, but really then taking it out from there and going with it.
Yeah, we would agree with John as well. It's about setting up a process, and the best way of doing that because we've seen it all in different places in Northern Ireland, the different situations do it differently depending on how linked they are with the other agencies that are involved. I think there's two sides. There's one side where people can take advantage, and it's important to have processes like referral processes in place so that agencies are linked and can talk to each other if they think that's necessary in a particular situation, or you know, as John was saying, people are usually genuine and usually wanting help, but we don't necessarily need lots of different agencies providing the same type of help, because that's maybe not a good economy of scale for resources to be used in that way. So we would have like a form that we fill out, and each like Dairy Core would keep those forms, so they would know their people, they would know them coming back again and again. And we kind of have a system where we can only help them a certain number of times each month, for example, depending on their situation. But it's very much on a, you know, how they present themselves and what their situation is.
I think as well, if you were talking about a specific amount of money given to families, our starting point would be the groups and the agencies that we work with probably over Christmas, because they have a good idea of the real family needs, and so we would work in partnership with them, and then that we would ensure that there would be no duplication. And one of the things that we do require is for people to say that they have not sought help from any other source. So, and genuinely people are very good at that and pretty honest. You would maybe get the odd one or two who would try and work the system, but we're pretty good at sussing that out.
Okay, thanks very much for that. The next indicated speaker is Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And on behalf of Sinn Féin, I want to thank John, Jackie, and Tanya for presenting the committee today. I suppose just starting on the Salvation Army, and I think it's fair to say that all members across the chamber will acknowledge that Salvation Army have got a reputation for providing practical support for people as and when they need it. And I think that's the approach that Councillor Doyle alluded to in terms of the hardship fund. From our perspective, we wanted to take a very similar approach in terms of having support available to people as to anybody who presented and needed help. And it's refreshing speaking to representatives from the Salvation Army and various charities across the city and district, that's the approach that they take. But so I think one of the things that we would like to do as a party is pay tribute and acknowledge the great work that's carried out right across the city and district by all the charities. But here and now, specifically in relation to the Salvation Army and the Cornerstone Church, for we do see it day and daily, the valued service that they provide to people in need from various walks of life. But and it's I suppose it's somewhat disappointing that that the Salvation Army in particular aren't in a position to provide the support that they would like to do because of the refurbishment works that's commencing on the buildings. But hopefully that once the works are complete, it will put them in good footing. They provide more support and provide improve their services that they provide in our city and district. Yeah, just in relation to the Hope Centre, I've had numerous opportunities to engage with Cornerstone Church, whether it was through the I Heart Dairy project, supporting businesses along Spencer Road, supporting community groups in Craigmere, and the and supporting patients in Altmagelvin Hospital. I've never I've always been blown away by the attitude and willingness to support people that we receive from the congregation of Cornerstone Church. And as deputy mayor last year, I had the privilege to get a tour of the Hope Centre, and it was I got a demonstration of the practical support that that John alluded to there earlier, and it really is life changing for many people right across our district. I know I've spoke to quite a few in the waterside who have availed of the Hope Centre, and I don't want to say that they relied on the Hope Centre, but in the early days, I suppose that's what they did. They did rely on the support that they received, but through the support that they've received, um, they they were able to become self-sufficient and learn skills that they didn't anticipate that they would receive when they first walked in through the doors. So the work that goes on within these centres is truly transformational. And I suppose just a question in terms of council perspective: is there any um, is there any approach that council could take that could support yourselves in terms of taking a partnership approach, or they not only signpost but they they help they help advertise or make people aware that those services are available, and I suppose more in a longer term view. Is there anything else that you feel a council could be doing to support valuable services such as this within our district? But on behalf of Champlain, I just want to take this opportunity to thank yourselves for presenting the committee today. It was one that I was certainly looking forward to, because I know I had the opportunity to get a tour of the building, to get demonstrations of the various levels of support that's available. But I thought it would be particularly useful for all our members and for council to be fully aware of this fantastic work that's going on right on our doorstep. So I would be keen to hear from yourself, John, in particular, around what practical support the council could offer um, going forward. But thank you, Chair, for bringing me in.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. John, I think that question was directed to yourself.
Okay, thank you, Christopher, for those kind words, and just even to the rate what the ladies were saying. I suppose for us, like we as a church, both churches are here. Like we don't foresee us going anywhere, and we really believe that this is our call and this is our mandate to be part of the city and to serve it in whatever best way we can. So I suppose, as Christopher has asked there, if there are ways of yes getting the word out there. I think both places is getting to be quite well known within the city, but if there are agencies within the council and streams that you could be challenging us into, would be great. I think mental health has a lot to do with this, and addiction related, whether it's drug abuse or alcohol abuse or whatever that looks like. And it's really, we're noticing a lot more of that around the Hope Centre and people coming in. So I suppose it's probably, challenging into different avenues of more professional help in that as well. I know we've got the likes of ARC as well, and different agencies, but I suppose how could all of these supports come together? So I suppose it's maybe streamlining it and maybe getting all these different agencies together, so like one person could be good at this or something's better at that, but it's dealing with the real need. That there seems to be what we've noticed, like just different roots at the heart where some of these people are coming in, and counselling, professional counselling, and different recovery things like that are probably needed too, and it's things that we're looking at, but we're just not quite there yet. So I hope I'm making sense in that one. So it's trying to maybe bring everybody together and then looking at real proper professional help and supporting one another.
Thank you for that, John. The next indicated speaker is Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair. And on behalf of People Before Profit, I want to thank you for taking time today to come in and make presentations to the Council about the work that you're doing. And it was really helpful to get it broken down so we get a real insight into how you're helping people right now. And we commend the efforts that you made through the pandemic and now into the cost of living crisis, which is really a humanitarian crisis. And I think, you know, charities, community groups, trade unions, all sorts of organizations have really stepped up to try and help people and attempt to keep people's head above water over the last year. Where government has failed, we've seen all sorts of voluntary and semi-voluntary and organizations step in to try and help people. And without that happening, things would be a lot worse. And I know from talking to groups and you know the independent advice sector as well, all these organizations are increasingly under a lot of pressure from the cost of living crisis itself in terms of keeping the lights on, but also because of the amount of need that exists because of the cost of living crisis. I mean, pre-pandemic, as you probably know, we had nearly 30% of people in this district, in Derry and in this district, living below the poverty line. That is worse now, much worse. You know, you know, so we are going to face serious and ongoing challenges. The issue of criteria was mentioned, and look, £308,000 in our hardship fund. I'm glad that we have it, but it is a drop in the ocean in terms of what we need. And the only reason we are in a position where our council is even in a situation where we're discussing creating hardship camp funds is because of failure of government to actually take more radical and serious action to protect people. But in terms of people taking a hand, and I know John mentioned it, and it wasn't his point, but that the people who are taking a hand right now are the people who are super wealthy. I just read today that billionaires in the UK, if they actually gave everyone, that's everyone in these islands, in the north and right across Britain, a £5,000 payment, they would still have this more than they had pre-pandemic. And that is shocking, because the people who are having a disco right now, while people are struggling and going to food banks, and while charities are under enormous pressure, the super wealthy have got wealthier. The profits of the FTSE companies have went up 73% since 2019. So the idea that everybody is struggling is so untrue. I mean, that the you know, the wealthiest in our society, in the midst of this cost of living crisis, have seen their wealths absolutely skyrocket. So it's not the case that there isn't enough to go around. It's not the case that poverty and being in a bad situation is your own fault. It's not accidental. This is coming from government policies, Stormont, the Dáil and Westminster, that are dictated to by big corporations that are handing their CEOs and top managers massive profits, millions of pounds, bonuses, and then telling their workers that they're getting another pay cut this year. And all this is contributing to the on-the-ground crisis that we're seeing in our communities, that's putting pressure on the council, that's putting pressure on charities, that's putting pressure on yourselves to actually meet the level of demand. So, you know, I commend and we commend the work that you're doing, but we have to look at how we're going to challenge the direction that we're going in. I think that there needs to be a big political challenge that begins to look at how we transfer wealth away from the rich, and we can't accept that they have a right to have a disco while so many people are struggling. And so I would appreciate your thoughts on that too, if you feel like you're in a position to give them. But thank you for being here today, and thank you for the contribution that you're making to helping people.
Thank you, Councillor Hagan. John, Tanya, and Jack, I'm not sure if you have anything you want to add there. Okay. Yep, go ahead.
I was just going to say, perhaps that's where people like yourselves come in and make the resources available to us so that we can then release it for others. We are non-judgmental and non-political, so we just want to help people who need to have this help.
Yep, thanks for that. The next indicated speaker I have is Councillor Tierney.
Could I, just maybe come off the back of Tanya there, if that's okay?
Yep, John, go ahead. Yep.
Sorry, forgive me. And again, thanks, Sean, for your kind words. I think Tanya's absolutely right. It's like we're probably on the ground and we're seeing more and more with the different referral systems that we have, and we know where the real need is. So I suppose if there's stuff there that we could be coming together of pointing it, like even at Christmas time, we worked really closely with a lot of the social workers in the city, where each Christmas we put out hampers of like turkey dinners, or for like the whole Christmas dinner. But we also did like a toy drive, where this year we went in vouchers for Smiths, and we were able to get alongside the social workers and say to them, where's the families in real need? And we were able then to target in that, where you're kind of cutting that out. So it's, I suppose we have the feet on the ground, but it's really coming together, I suppose, as council and us and the different agencies that are in the city that are really meeting with the people and then zoning in on that and really blessing them and really letting them see that, look here, this is for you, and it just changes people's lives, but it's hitting it really the crisis right where it's at. So I hope that's okay.
Yep, thanks for that, John. The next speaker is Councillor Tierney. We'll move on to the next speaker. Councillor Tierney, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me, Chair?
Yep, I hear you now. Yep, go ahead.
Apologies. Thank you, Chair, for bringing me in, and thanks to John, Jackie, and Tanya for coming here today to give us a presentation on the work that they're involved in. And it's unfortunate that St. Vincent de Paul were unable to make it, and I hope that in due course they're given a similar opportunity, Chair, to come back and present this. I think Councillor Doyle has touched on, first and foremost, the criteria around the hardship fund, and I would be keen as well to see if some learning from both organisations could be shared with this council. In respect of that, we, like most parties and councillors on this meeting, want to see that criteria as relaxed as can be, but we also want to make sure that the support gets out there to the right people. There's no doubt that the work of the Salvation Army and the Cornerstone Church through the Hope Centre is making a real impact and making a real difference to people's lives across the city and district. And it's just unfortunate that we're seeing every time that we're getting a presentation like this, we're seeing information from the organisations. We're seeing that the need for those organisations is only growing and growing. I do have to say, one of the slides that I was particularly interested in was the stages of hope at the Hope Centre, particularly the Rescue, Renew and Restore, which shows that there is progression away from the needs of services like these, and that there's that and I suppose it's in the name. There's that bit of hope given the people as they enter that service. One time, Chair, and we will all know one time in the year that is particularly difficult for families, regardless of your own income, is whenever children are going back to school. And I know that the school uniform grant is there, but if we're being honest, we all know that it's never enough to clothe a child for the school year. And many families have to take money and add money to that grant to ensure that their child has the appropriate uniform for their particular school. I'm wondering, is there any plans of help or support that any of the organisations present today could be given out to people? And is there something that we could be pointing people in the right direction? I'll be keen to hear that. And I'm also, I have to say, although I was glad to see the slides in advance and be able to read them, but I was shocked that in this day and age that an organisation like the Hope Centre have to offer shower and laundry facilities, a basic human right that people are now having to seek help and support for. Fair play to the Hope Centre for doing it. I'm not criticising them, but the very basic human right is where people now have to seek support to go and find. And I think it was Tanya that spoke about people who were in B&B, temporary accommodation, also needing support around laundry facilities. Maybe Tanya could give us a description of how or why those people have ended up in B&B accommodation. I think I have an idea, but I don't want to cast aspersions on a live public meeting like this. But if I am correct, then the organisation which has placed those individuals and those families within those facilities have a duty and a responsibility to make sure that the basic facilities are available to them. So, Chair, that's a few points that I would be keen to hear from our guest today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. John, Tanya, Jackie, if you want to pick up on those issues.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. We have we have those facilities, the washing facilities there. It was just when we were setting up the Hope Centre, ideally it was for homeless people and all of that. Now we do the way that we would use them, it may be older people or people that are slightly disabled. That we haven't really had people from B&Bs coming in. To be honest, we would maybe get some more of the guys from the B&Bs coming to get food or to get clothes from the actual clothing bank. I think some of them are maybe coming out. Maybe some of them are coming through the likes of maybe Simon Community, or maybe they're coming out of probation, different things like that. But we would just be helping them with clothes and getting them food. But also on the uniform front, it's a key time. We have put out a call to our own congregation within the church, and we'll probably be looking at probably doing a bit of a social media drive coming in now to the tail end of the summer. It's a real key thing. I know there are a lot of other churches, possibly I'd heard just at the weekend within the Waterside area within the city, that have been doing this as well. But we have put out a call for uniforms to try and help families in real need, because it really is, it's a key time. So we are doing that and looking to get as much uniforms in there as we can at the minute.
Can I just remind you as well that Tanya and myself are speaking in Belfast on behalf of the Derry Salvation Army, so we don't know exactly all the details, but we would say that our understanding is that these people who are coming from bed and breakfast facilities are homeless folk who have been, I suppose, temporarily rehoused in these bed and breakfast accommodations, and so they don't have the facilities for washing, and they're coming asking if we can provide the money really to allow them to go to the laundrettes or wherever and to avail of this facility. We're not sort of trying to ditch the question or hide the question, but we really can't answer it fully because we don't honestly have the knowledge. But if Julia were here, she would have probably been able to give you a better answer than we are at the moment.
Chair, if I could just come back on there very quickly.
Go ahead.
Thanks very much for those answers, and I think any councillor reading between the lines can work out exactly what's happening there around that situation. And I think it's something we can pick up with a number of organisations that have littered it. But thanks very much for the information. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. The next speaker is Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. I go a wee bit, but it'll be all right. No, just to thank the speakers for bringing their presentations. And again, just to thank the speakers for bringing the presentations there. And I know we did miss that St Vincent de Paul weren't able to come in, but do, on behalf of myself and my own party, thank them for the work that they've done. And we know there's a massive amount of time and effort put into it, and it's a lot of it's on volunteer basis there. I was just sort of touching on, there's various questions, but to be fair, you've covered a lot of it and the previous speakers have already asked it, and I don't want to just repeat it for the sake of repeating it. But just, I know in regard to St Vincent de Paul, and we don't have a speaker from them, they do have their centres in Strabane and there's Castlereagh and Sion Mills and that, but it's more so just touching upon the likes of, and again, the Cornerstone, the Hope Monasteries there. I would be minded as more Londonderry focused or more within the city, but it's more, I suppose, to the Salvation Army, a larger maybe group. And what sort of outreach or aspect into the wider council area? I mean, myself and yourself as well, Chair, representing the Derg DA, and what work or is there much of an outreach from yourselves, or can you partner up with more groups in there, or is it more in with St Vincent de Paul in regards to Castlereagh, Newton Stewart, Sion Mills and that rural end? So just a wee point on that, just if you could just clarify a few wee points on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman Kerrigan. John, Jackie, Tanya, have you any comments there you'd like to make?
Yeah, and I know we're based right in the heart of the city in Duke Street, and like our church is it's city focused, but like we're delivering food to as far as Lumavady, Ballykelly, and we're going up as far as like new buildings to Dunnamana and the Strabane, Artie Garvin direction. So it's kind of covering a good bit of the northwest, to be fair. So we do offer deliveries as well, and in that way we take clothes and stuff out as well. So we would be kind of covering, yeah, the northwest as far as we can, and also ask people like if they can come to the Hope Centre and prevail in the different services if they're about the city, that they're all open there. But yeah, it's just trying to bring people on. It's not to leave people in a stuck situation. It's trying to progress them through the different stages so they get out of the just kind of the hole that they're in. So yeah, we would have a northwest kind of vision as well.
We would be probably in a similar situation. We obviously are based in Derry, but we also have a building in Limavady. But we do get phone calls from various parts of the area around the northwest, and so I do know that help has been given further afield than just Derry, but specifically those places I couldn't honestly name you at the moment because again, we're speaking on behalf of the Salvation Army.
Thank you for that. The next indicated speaker is Alderman Guy.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in. On behalf of the Ulster Unionist Party, I'd like to thank John, Tanya and Jackie for coming along here today to present the committee. John, I know from yourself and your members, and indeed from referring people towards the Hope Centre for assistance, all about the good work that you and your team carry out. And I just want to take this opportunity to say about the iHeart and just to say thanks for all the work that they do and that they've provided the communities within the city and district. I know speaking to a lot of communities who have availed of such help, they're very appreciative of it. Tanya and Jackie, again, well aware of the good work that is carried out by the Salvation Army. I know that you were instrumental in getting out the vouchers and things like that there for the gas, electricity, and the oil heating, and also the Christmas toy appeal that's ran. It's excellent. It helps out a lot of families that are struggling around that time of year, and it's been a real godsend to some. Going back on what Councillor Doyle said about the money that we have available, I think it is important that we do bring groups like yourselves in. You are there on the coalface. You are getting weekly, daily, people are crying out for assistance, and I think you know where the money's needed most. So you really need to come in and be allowed to come in and help us out to distribute that money and tell us where it is needed most. Just one more, and I know this is sort of basically, we hear now about I'm going back maybe 6 or 7 years when a guy says to me he was home from Edinburgh and he worked in a mobile phone shop, but it wasn't enough to keep him going when he just paid his bills, and he used to go on a Thursday afternoon to the back of Tesco's, and the guy used to hand out the food, all the out-of-date stuff at the back of Tesco's to people, and that's how he survived. And that was the first sort of thing where working poor, where I had heard it was coming in. Obviously, it's been around a lot longer, but when people at work had to rely on food banks and handouts like that there from the back gates of Tesco's, and I know we really look at it and people on benefits struggling and so on, but we've seen that change throughout the years. Do you keep any records on maybe a percentage increase on the amount of those that are on the breadline? They work, but once they've their bills paid off and so on, they really don't have much more disposable income. Do you have percentages of numbers wise how that has increased over the past maybe 3 years or so? Thanks anyway for the presentation today. Very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Gay. John, Tanya, Jackie, over to yourselves.
Thank you, Darren. Appreciate your kind words. Yeah, I wouldn't have it on me here, to be honest, but I would say even, I think if we even went back a few months, I think it would be more so that we're going to see that. I love that phrase, as you said, about the working poor. That's where we sense that it is really focusing in on now. And I would say just even in the last 4 to 6 months, we have seen a real increase in this within the Hope Centre. It's just that. So I could possibly get some of those figures together and send them to you on that. But we have noticed that it's the people that are trying to work, that are trying to get out there and earn a living and not being on benefits, but they're just not having quite enough. And I think it's going to progress more as well the further we go on and into this year. So if that's possible, I could get those figures to you, if that's okay.
Thanks, John. Jackie, Tanya, have you anything you'd like to add there?
This is Tanya here. So yeah, again, sorry, we just don't have the detail in the specific council area that we're talking about today, but we would hear obviously different stories, and the only reason we would know, we obviously kind of ask particular questions to clients who come to us for support and try to find out a wee bit about their background, but we don't specifically ask all of those types of questions. So we wouldn't necessarily know why, whether they're working or whether they're, surviving on benefits or whatever. But certainly from my own perspective, things are in the request for support is increasing throughout Northern Ireland. We're certainly hearing more at headquarters, which we wouldn't normally, because our church leaders are coming to us asking for our support to them to provide this support locally, if that makes sense. And then also we are getting people who are being caught out, really, I suppose, by the increase in costs. The utility costs and the food increases are just rising exponentially, and some people are just about surviving and then get hit with a large bill which they weren't expecting, and that causes them to seek support from their local agencies, whoever they approach. So again, we're like John, I wouldn't have the details of the increase, but just to say that there's definitely been a marked increase year on year, and as John said as well, month on month almost.
Okay, Tanya, thank you for that. The next indicated speaker is Councillor Michaela Boyle.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to John, Jackie and Tanya for their presentations. I suppose a lot has been said already in terms of, you know, examining what council could do and what kind of support we could give to both organisations in terms of funding to assist them and getting the funding to those most in need. Councillor Kerrigan, I suppose, to ask my questions in terms of, you know, the rural areas. I suppose, you know, I'm a Strabane Sperrin based councillor, and I'm conscious that both organisations, you know, haven't got centres in the Strabane area either, and we depend on other community and voluntary groups to support people with that. But rural isolation and access to services is a big issue, as you know, Chair. And, you know, we rely heavily on the community and voluntary services within our areas. You know, even to know that the Hope Centre and the Salvation Army can reach out to groups and individuals in the rural areas is good. John touched on his presentation in terms of there's now a greater need from working families and the working poor, and we're seeing that there's more and more evidence of that, as you know, and I suppose the pandemic has thrown that up, and getting access to support for people who are in low income and low wage. You know, there's people making choices whether they pay for a car to drive to work or they don't work, and that's, or they don't feed their family, or they don't heat their homes. And we're going to find now, coming into the winter, you know, over the autumn period, that's going to be exacerbated just with the crippling prices of fuel and food. I also was keen to hear the access to the stages and restore in progress, John, and I was very keen to hear, you know, what the work you are doing in terms of re-employment opportunities and upskilling people that come looking for your services. And I know you do assist people with access to addiction recovery services, and you know, that kind of area. So I was just wondering, John, you know, obviously COVID has had its own problems for people accessing addiction and recovery services, and was that a problem for yourselves as an organisation, you know, during the pandemic, and is that something that's been restored, and are you finding it more difficult to get people supported in terms of, you know, access to services for addiction and addiction recovery? And if that's something council could help your organisation achieve, you know, throughout our trust area, then we'd be happy as a committee to support you in doing that. So just keep up the good work on both organisations in terms of the work you are doing. And just as I said, you know, we're always mindful of the community and voluntary sector and the work that the organisations like yourselves are doing right across the city and district. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. John, it's one for yourself.
Okay, thank you. Really appreciate your kind words. Yeah, like that stage 3, the restore and the re-employment, that's something that, as I said, we're currently looking at. We're quite fortunate that we have a lot of business people and entrepreneurs, a few of them within the church, and their heart is that it's kind of how do we upskill, how do we make people more re-employable. So at the minute we're looking at, even within the actual Hope Centre, of having a cafe, and we're seeing a lot of the people coming in, and they feel they're coming for help, but whenever they get the help, then they because they're in this place of crisis, they want to give the help. Like, we've had 3 or 4 different key people over the pandemic that have struggled with just alcoholism, but they came in, and then all of a sudden they want to pack the boxes of the food, and we've had 2 or 3 men that have came in, and like, they've packed hundreds of boxes for us, and we've just got around them. But I suppose it's been hard over lockdown, where the different rehab centres were very tight and enclosed, and we don't have those facilities as yet. It would be our vision and our goal that we would have in-house counselling, we would have different addiction recovery services within house, but we're exploring that and growing. So yeah, I think that would be something that we could definitely benefit from. It would be something that is real. We're seeing a lot of people that are coming in are struggling with addiction, and it's just giving them a safe environment and somewhere that they can feel that they can partner with. But these guys also want to help, and we can trying to create that by upskilling them. And as I was saying about the cafe, like, could we maybe get them like a coffee or course, or partnering with the local college, and even getting a hygiene course, and really just doing interview skills and things like that, and then going into like different businesses within the city and making these people more employable, and any links that we have, just trying to get alongside both parties, because whenever you're dealing with addiction, it's messy, but it's also creating that pathway of having a system that's there, where we know it can be a slow process, and that people get to step into it is what they're doing. So yeah, that would be good.
Thanks for that, John. The next speaker is Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair, for permission to come in. I'm not a member of the committee, but John, Jackie, Tanya, many thanks for the presentation, and please pass on to all in your organisations thanks for the work that you do on behalf and for our citizens in need. Several points, and I think it was Councillor Harkin who referred to our hardship fund and the amount in it. It is small, and therefore my colleagues will have heard me quoting this particular one from Voltaire, plagiarising it a wee bit. Victory is not necessarily to the big battalions, but to the best shots. And it is important that with the small amount of resources that we have, that they are targeted well. And I suppose that's why we want to hear from you as to the best way to use our resources. We've had some suggestions already, but I would trust that there will be ongoing engagement to develop as to how our resources can be best used. Mention has already been made of the area of common bond that each of the organisations would work within. John, you referred to going on up to Limavady, down as far as Strabane, Donamana, I think as well. A couple of us would be very pleased to see presence moving a wee bit further south than that, to the southern part of the council area. But I realise resources can be stretched within organisations such as your own. Jackie and Tanya, you talked about your centres in Londonderry and Limavady. I seem to remember Salvation Army presence in Enniskillen, and in fact I have memories of the war cry being sold in Castlederg, but it was folk from Enniskillen who come in on that end and were involved in their presence and indeed witness within the Castlederg area. So perhaps a wee bit of a stretch out. I don't know if the organisation still exists within the Fermanagh end, but perhaps that's an avenue that you could pass on to your Londonderry colleagues to allow an overlap with the other folk who may be able to assist within our area. I was particularly struck with the issue of the client who just didn't know how to turn on the oven, open the can for soup or whatever. And I suppose I'm very old school, and going back to my own teaching days, I remember the issue of life skills and domestic science being taught within secondary schools. And I suppose the analogy of giving a fish as opposed to teaching someone how to fish, whilst realizing, of course, that at this moment in time, for many, the needs are immediate and need to be addressed. Would you agree that there's a need to develop those life skills and assist people to use what resources they can access to a much better degree? Whilst we talk about hard to reach in the rural area, there are also those out there, and I don't know how you would deal with this, but I have come across it, of people who are too proud to seek help, to seek assistance. I know during the pandemic of cases where people went with parcels to certain households and they were shunned and told to go away. But we know that the families, etc., were in need, but it was that proudness whereby people said, "Oh, no, go away. Don't be treating us like that." So how can that be overcome? And I think that's all of the issues that I have there. But extreme thanks for your presentation, the work that you do, and like others in the committee and in the full council, we welcome your input as to how we can best use the resources that we have to target those who need to be targeted. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. Tanya and John, if there's anything that you want to pick up and come back to Alderman Hussey on?
Can I just say to Alderman that there is still a Salvation Army in Enniskillen? You'll be pleased to know that.
And I think just to say that, yeah, like this upskilling and this like life skills, it's key, and we're just seeing this more. And I think that's why for us, like that second stage of the Hope Centre with the social supermarket, it's actually showing and doing things step by step. Like we take this for granted, but I know that day that was a young lad that was just under influence of drugs, and all his money efforts had went into just feeding his addiction, and didn't have a clue how to turn on an oven or anything. But that's where it's like maybe there's like different community courses out there of looking at those upskilling and general life skills of doing that. And absolutely, you're right there about people that they're proud. It's their backs are against the wall. And a bit of my background is I'm a chef by trade, and I worked on school meals for the last 10 years. And what I've seen in the schools is that it's in the families. Some of the meals that the children are getting is the only meal that they'll get in a day. That a phone bill will not go, Sky will not go, the car won't go. It's the food that goes first. But then on the flip of it, there are people that just have been like, no, I'm a grafter and I have to do this. And this is where it's trying to use discernment and be wise of how we engage with people and just encourage them. And yeah, for us, I suppose too, we've tried to even just maybe bless people, like just go and leave a parcel at the door if we were thinking people were in real need, when we knew they weren't in and they didn't know where it was coming from, and do it discreetly. So it's just trying to help people right along the path that they're on.
Okay, John, thank you very much. The next speaker I have is Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the Alliance Party, can I give my sincere thanks to both John, Jackie and Tanya for presenting today and the work that they do. I am familiar with both the Cornerstone Church and the work that they're doing within our areas, because they've reached out quite a lot to my DA when it comes to the Fahun DA. And a lot of my questions were answered, especially around the rural aspect of things and how people perceived reaching out for help. So I appreciate that. Our intention with this presentation was to try and learn from yourselves how we are best to use this money for our hardship fund. We're trying to do it with as least amount of bureaucracy and make it accessible to as many people as possible, but making sure that it actually reaches people that actually need it, because we know it's not going to go very far. So it's great to kind of have you on board, and hopefully when we do get to that point, we'll be able to take some of the learnings from yourselves to put towards the hardship fund itself. I probably know the answer is going to be food and fuel. And what I'm looking at is I'm very apprehensive and scared for the winter months, because we're seeing such an increase in families. I see it myself, people reaching out that they can't afford the fuel, or they can't afford the food because everything's increasing. And like you say, it could be the working poor, where they do have those Sky or the mobile phones, and everything's been increased, or there's been an extra 5%, 7% added on, and these things are sometimes contracted, so you can't even default in them. So there's huge pressures on many people, and I foresee that that's only going to get worse come autumn and the winter. But I wanted to check with yourselves if is there any other aspects in which you are seeing coming down the track that we need to be aware of, or we need to be looking out for the extra pressures? I know the school uniforms is a big one come September, but I really do appreciate the work you are doing. It's sad that you are feeling the pressure because of the increase. It's sad that we're in this situation, but it's great that you are out there, and you've got a great team of volunteers and a great team behind you that are doing fantastic work and touching so many people within our Chilean district. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. John and Tanya, do you want to pick that up?
I would just say, I think, thank you, Rachel. I think what everyone has been talking about here, it's the price of heating oil, food, and uniforms that's going up. I don't offhand see anything jumping out other than those key areas.
I think we would definitely concur with John there. That's definitely the crux of the issue, really, and will continue to be so.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Harkin, I'm going to ask you to come back in, but try and be brief. Okay, Councillor Harkin.
Pass, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, the final speaker I have is Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in, and I do apologise. I was late coming in, but I do understand, and I know my colleague has spoken on it, Alderman Kerrigan, but I do understand the good work that these organisations do. And look, I'm a member of the working group, the Hardship Fund working group, and look, we're doing our best, but we have a small amount of money there, and look, what we're trying to do is make it as easy for people to get their hands on it, but we want to make sure, Chair, that those that do receive it are in need. And I'm just wondering, when I attend those meetings, we always talk about criteria. How, if somebody walks in off the street and asks, look, do I need food or whatever, need clothes or whatever it is, how does the organisations go through a criteria just to check that there is a bona fide need there? And that's someone we talk fairly often about in the working group, is the criteria. Maybe some of the groups here, but look, I'll await the answer, but look, keep up the good work. And as a committee, we're very supportive of receiving, the knowledge that you have to pass that on to our group, and maybe host it at our group meeting sometime to give us that experience of how it's handled. But just wondering how you access, if someone goes in, what is the criteria that's left down? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney. Tanya, John, if you want to pick that up on the criteria.
Thank you very much, Morris. Appreciate your words. Yeah, we would have a referral system there. We would have like a small interview stage that we would go through. Each person that comes in will go through that. So at the start, I suppose it was a real learning curve for us where we just anyone would have got food, but we wanted to really home in on the people that really needed the food. So that's why is in that rescue stage one, like we have it now, you get food 3 times in 3 months. And then really it's pushing them on to the next stage of getting them into the social supermarket. So we're not leaving people sitting there. But again, it's through like an interview style system where we go through just a list of questions to see if people are on benefits or where people are at, and getting people to try and be as honest with us as we can. And I suppose still, because we are a church, we probably still will sway of being generous and helping people where we can, but we want to see people coming on and coming out of different steps where they are. But we have different things in place. Again, I could get some of those. I just don't have it on me here, but I could get some of those, like maybe questionnaires or different informations that we go through with each of the people coming through the Hope Centre. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, we would have a similar type of system. We have I suppose we would like to try and get to know people, sort of see how they tick and what the real situation is, the real need is. But we do have a series of questions that we would ask. Again, as John said, we're a church and we kind of want to hone down on the kindness and the generosity and the love and the understanding. And 9 times out of 10, people are very truthful and helpful. And we find that this is a good help for us as well. We do, of course, rely on some of the other bigger agencies as well who would refer folk to us. And again, we would just take their judgment because they're people who we believe are honest and have integrity and are helpful to us. So we know that if they refer people, that there would be genuine cases.
Okay, thanks for that. Members, I've no further indicated speakers, and just on behalf of myself, I do want to thank John, Jackie and Tanya for their presentations today, and I'm sure you would agree, I found it very informative and engaging. I want to thank them for the work they're doing on a daily basis, and as well as all their members and volunteers throughout the district. As articulate well by them, people are suffering across the district. They do need help, and they're providing that help, especially as people suffer even more due to the cost of living crisis. So I want to thank them for coming to this special committee today, and hopefully members in the near future as well, we can also rearrange for St Vincent de Paul to address the committee, because I think their input would also be invaluable in addition to today's presentations as well. Members, in that regard, we have no further items of business, and I would like to close the meeting, and I'll see us all on Thursday for the Health and Communities meeting. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having us on here. Can I just say, look, if any of the councils would like to come over at any point and see round the Hope Centre and that, look, you'd be most welcome at any time to come over, and yeah, we'd love to show you around. So thank you for your time today and for having us on. Thank you.